heard his name the first time in 2016, and he's probably been on my radar ever since. I've associated his name with almost all the banging artists we've seen in the country. His work experience has comprised of music, and more music. And he's even been into guitar tech, from radio to A&R to programming to DJing as T-Bone Steaks. He's pretty much done it all. He's managed some of the biggest artists from India, including Nuclear, Blot, Rajkumari, Sand Dunes, Duelist Inquiry, Anish Sood, Nicholson. It's a power-packed list. He carved out a niche of his own following a significant stint at OML as head of artist management, launching Third Culture in 2017, managing some of the coolest artists in the indie scene. And in 2021, he launched Export Quality Records, an indie label dedicated to making Indian artists go global. He's featured not once, but twice in GQ's top 50 most influential young Indians. And he's now hustling at Nodwin and heading up live events for the company, which I'm sure you know took over NH7 Weekender from OML. This podcast is all about the music and the business. So safe to say it's pretty obvious why he's my guest today. Welcome to Let's Talk Music, Tej. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Sandhya. It's so nice of you to give me such a formal introduction, but I'm just a music guy, yeah. So, thanks for having me on here. It really means a lot. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while, so
yeah, me too. Today. Me too. And I think you deserve an introduction like that because, you've done, from all the guests that I've been with, you've had such a diverse range of experience, but within the music industry, we've had different people who've talked about different kinds of experiences outside the music industry. So I think everyone needs to know that.
That's awesome. Very kind of you.
All right. I'm going to dive right in. I want to start right at the beginning. How did you get into music? Was the plan always to be part of the music industry? And was that something that was it an intentional thing?
Not really. If we're going to start at the very beginning.
Yeah. Sure, why not?
I'll keep it as concise as possible, basically. So I have an older brother who's 18 months older than me, and he's a drummer. So I grew up with my older brother basically playing drums.
Nice.
And when I was about 8 years old, I got my first guitar. And so me and Veer started jamming from that time. And, Veer has played with Prateek Kuhad. He was in Prateek's band for the first couple of years. He played with Rajasthan Roots. He's been around, and he actually is the reason why I got into music in a big way. So,
nice.
We grew up playing music together, and I moved to the US when I was 13. I grew up in Australia. My mom's English, my dad's Punjabi. And when we were 13, we moved to DC, and that was 2003. So right after I turned 14, I went to a very legendary rock club in Washington, DC called the 930 Club. It's been there for 30 years. And, Veer was like, hey man, we got to go see this band. And he was 16 at the time, So my mom was like, look, if your brother's going to take care of you while you go down there, which is a horrible idea because Veer's an absolute maniac, But, she's like, if Veer's going to take care of you guys while you're down there, it's okay. You can go, So we went down there, and I didn't really know that much about the band that we were going to go and see. And, I see all these techs setting up the gear, getting the stage ready. Everybody's all heavily tattooed, looking like a badass, And I was like, man, this is cool,
Yeah.
And curtain drops, and it's the Deftones, And
shit.
they were on the White Pony tour. White Pony had just come out, and there's a song on White Pony. It's the third song on the album. It's called Elite, and it's an absolute monster of a riff, And the band just kicks off into that, and from that minute, I was like, "Yeah, this is what I'm doing," basically. And that was just the eureka moment where I was just like, "Yeah, I was already a guitar player. Veer was a drummer, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that this is what I'm going to do." So I started working towards it at that point. About 14, 15 years old, and then
wow,
pretty much every job that I've had has been music related in some way or the other. Except for the very first job I had, which was a very weird job where I was an evil clown, and I used to work in a haunted forest. I'm dead serious,
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious. So when I was in high school, I used to work at a haunted forest where kids would go, during the Halloween weekend, and so my outfit was like this.
Evil clown.
But I had like an airport pilot's like onesie, like jumpsuit, and I had this evil clown face. I used to drop a pint of fake blood on my head and then hide in a forest with a chainsaw.
Oh my God.
And I used to scare kids in the forest. So that was my very, very first job. But
Fun times.
I've always had very strange employment, but. So I started working towards, having a career in music, but both of my parents are diplomats. My mother works for the UN and my father works for the World Bank. So, I've grown up a lot and I've traveled a lot, while I was growing up. So, it was either going to be music or it was going to be international relations. That's kind of what I was.
Quite a spectrum, though.
Yes, very much so. And I didn't have the easiest time in high school. Moving from India, from a private school in New Delhi with only 100 kids a class, I was thrown into an American public high school with 3,400 kids. My graduating class was like 800 kids. And so. All of those, sort of cliches that you see in like American school movies, like here's the skaters and here's the stoners and here's the band kids and here's the preppy kids. That I experienced that in real life, and nobody wanted to be friends with the weird kid with an afro and braces from India. Basically.
You had an afro? Wow,
very much so. Yeah. So I found my solace in heavy music. That's really like what kept me going. All through high school. And when it came time to choose a college, I had actually applied to both sort of streams. I'd applied to a few colleges to do international relations, and I'd applied to a few colleges to do sound and audio. And when I was in Boston, I was just sort of like walking down the street, and I heard this amazing music coming out of some speakers onto the road, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And I just looked. And it was a glass window and I could look right into the studio, and the band that was playing, I was actually listening to outside. So I was like, oh, what is this? And turns out it was a college radio station called WERS, which was run by Emerson College, which is where I actually ended up going to college. So, I just walked in the building. I asked, hey, can I do a tour? Can I check out the facility? And they're like, oh, you're in luck. In 15 minutes there's a tour. So we're going to tour the whole facility. And, I did that tour, and I just saw the recording studio and all the editing suites. And I was like, oh, this is dope. Like, this is like, I got
this is it.
Basically. So, I applied and I managed to get in. Like school was never tough for me, because I didn't have a lot of friends. I was always like pretty good at like studies and like that kind of stuff. So I got in and I started going there. And that first year at college, I immediately applied to work at the radio station, and I was accepted. And so I started working as a junior assistant. And all you're really allowed to do in the first year is basically like wrap cables, and like clean up after friends, like when they leave and stuff like that. But that radio station had such diverse programming where we were doing jazz music and Broadway show tunes and singer-songwriter stuff, and we had a hip-hop show and we had a metal show, and that's where my musical world really like went totally bonkers.
I know, I can imagine.
So
at that age,
exactly. Yeah. So I was like, all right, cool. This is what I'm doing, and so I was working at the radio station. I became an engineer. I was doing my own sessions. I was bringing bands in. I was recording them. And that's really where I found a love for this music. And then when I was a senior, actually no, when I was a junior in college, I moved to Los Angeles for the first time, and the college had a program where you could move to LA for like 4 months. And you could intern and get college credits for your internship. So I applied to Universal to work in their mastering studio, and I applied to Warner Chappell. Warner Chappell is the publishing arm of Warner Brothers. They take care of all the publishing. So and luckily, I was very blessed to be accepted to both. So I found it very hard to choose between Warner Chappell and between Universal Mastering. So I actually petitioned the college to allow me to do both internships. So I gave myself double work. Yeah. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I was at Warner Chappell, and Tuesdays and Thursdays, I was at Universal Mastering, basically as an intern.
That's crazy dedication, though.
Yeah. So I knew this is what I wanted to do. So I wrapped that up. I went back to Boston for a semester, and then I moved to Los Angeles. And I lived in LA 2010, 2011. At which point the company I was working for in LA was called Hello Music, and it was kind of a tech play. And the idea was basically that, independent artists would upload their material to our system. We would then screen the music, and I was part of the music screening team. So we would we would judge this music based on 3 criteria, which was basically the production, the songwriting, and the arrangement. Essentially was what we were looking at. And then if you got a 3.5 or higher out of 5 stars, then it was retained in the system, and then we would take that and we would sub-license it out. So it would go to airlines, like Delta was like one of the big clients. We would take license cheap music, and then advertising houses and that kind of thing. But after 10 years of living in the US, I walked into work one fine day, and that's the company that was kind of doing my H-1B and my visa and all of that. And I was in a weird gray area where my student visa had expired, but I didn't have my employment visa yet. So I was in this gray area, and one fine day I walked into work, and there was a general meeting, and everybody was in this meeting, from the president of the company all the way down to like the janitor. And this guy walks in his suit, and he goes, "Hey, I'm Chris. I'm from Chicago, and a lot of guys don't know me, but I'm the venture capitalist behind this company, and unfortunately, you guys are not hitting the numbers that I want you to be hitting. So as of today, I'm pulling the plug. So everybody gets 2 weeks of severance pay, and see you later." So after 10 years of living in the US, I was given 14 days to leave the country, basically.
My God. Shit.
It was pretty hectic, the first 7 days I sold my car. I got somebody to move my apartment. I was dating somebody at the time in New York. So then I flew to New York for the last 7 days. And then I ended up moving from there to Africa. My parents were living in Tanzania at the time. So I went to Tanzania over the summer, and I was in Tanzania for about 3 months. And I was kind of deciding, okay, what are my next steps? What am I doing? And my plan was to move to the UK and work in a studio. But this is 2011, and this is like global recession at its peak, So I spoke to a bunch of friends in the UK, and they were like, "Look, man, like people are getting laid off, left, right, and center. So what makes you think that you're just going to get off a plane and immediately be employed? That's not a realistic situation, So I was like, damn, okay, maybe I need to rethink this a little bit." And a cousin of mine was getting married in India in October of 2011. So in September, I came to India, and I just thought, okay, let me just check it out a little bit. I'll see what, the lay of the land is kind of happening and that kind of thing. And through Veer was already living in India at that point in time. My older brother, he took me to a venue in Hoskas Village. And in Hoskas Village in 2010 to let's say 2014 or so, was the epicenter of cool, in Delhi at least. It had all the bars, it had all the indie venues, it had, that's really where the music community, independent music community in Delhi was thriving. So he took me to this venue called TLR Cafe, the Living Room, and he introduced me to a group of 3 guys called the Reggae Rajas. And they had a night on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday they had a night called Simmer Down, where they would play sort of roots reggae and less of the party stuff and more of the vibing out, chilling. And so I met those guys there, and we became friendly. And one of the guys in Reggae Rajas, General Zeus Zoravar, I knew him because I knew his little brother from before, and we actually went to Emerson together. So I'd spent some time with him in Boston, and so I was like, I had no idea you were, doing this reggae thing. And so through him, I met DJ Mo City, Mohammed Aboud, who is I'm happy to say it on record. My mentor, and he's the guy who put me on in the music scene, here in India.
Okay.
So I met Mo, and me and Mo, started hanging and started kicking it. And, he sort of knew Veer from before, but he also knew that I'd worked in music previously. I had background as an engineer, and I kind of knew my stuff, technically speaking. And, Mo introduced me to, he said, hey, this is artist I'm working with. He's cool, and he's doing this sort of electronic meets live guitar kind of a thing. And his name is Duelist Inquiry, and you should meet it,
Okay.
So Mo took me to meet Sahej, and, I hung out with Sahej. I listened to some of the music. And at that time, I was listening to like a lot of like glitch hop stuff. Like I was listening to Pretty Lights and Glitch Mob and Dramatic and, all that kind of Cohen sound. And, so I really loved what Sahej was making, and then a couple of days after that, Mo was like, listen, we want you to take on a slightly larger role in what we're doing. So can you put together a proposal, for Duelist Inquiry and like what we plan to do in the next couple of months? And, the UK thing had kind of left my mind at that point. And I was like, all right, well, let me kind of pursue this properly. So I put together a 5-year plan for Duelist, and it included merchandise and record releases and touring plan and pretty much a 360 idea of what we could kind of do together. So I wore a shirt and tie, and I got all proper, and I walked over to the studio, and these guys laughed at me like when I went to go present, just because of how formally I was taking this, and they're both very dear friends now, 12 years later, but I really looked up to these guys, so I presented my plan. Mo was like, okay, cool, man, we'll get back to you, kind of thing. And so then he calls me, the next day. He's like, look, we really liked your plan. Why don't you come on board? Why don't we start doing some work together? And so that's why I started with Duelist, and
wow, okay.
A couple of weeks after this happened, Mo again calls me and he says, hey, man, if you're still around in November, we're doing this thing in Pune, and it's a music festival, and I'd really like you to be part of the team, and to come down and to work with us. So I was like, I was naive and I didn't really know what was going on, and I was like, I think I could do that, man. So count me in. Next thing I know, we're on a plane. We go down to Pune. It's myself, and about 6 other guys, with Mo as our ringleader. And that event in 2011 in November was Bacardi NH7 Weekenders second edition. And that's when that's when they expanded considerably. It was at Lakshmi Dawns, and they had 6 stages, and it was a spectacle, and in April of that year, I had been to Coachella. So I was like, how dope would it be if we could do this in India? And then I saw the makings of that in NH7 in 2011. So we got there like beginning of the week, and we actually did nothing but paint the stage. We were given this shed, which became the dub station. And so it was like grimy and dirty and all that. So we spent 3 days whitewashing the whole thing, painting it white on the inside. And then we brought in all these graffiti artists, and they then painted the whole place and made it look super, super dope. And we actually had 2 stages within that shed. One was a live stage, and one was our sort of main sound system, kind of like control area sort of stage. And that stage was dedicated to reggae, roots, dubstep, all the urban genres of music, basically. And it was a party. It was amazing, So we had a really good time that weekend, and that's where I got to know the OML guys for the first time, Bobby and Vijay, and I think they liked me because they realized I was a hard worker, and I kind of knew my stuff, and I knew what was going to happen. I ended up, my role at that weekend was the stage manager, and I had never stage managed before, so I kind of just jumped into it head first and figured it out, as we were kind of going along. But one of the DJs that I met during that time at NA7 weekend in 2011 was DJ Sue Real, who's still around today, and is a very dear friend of mine. Bada bhaiya, you can say. And so I ended up meeting Sue, and Sue was like, "Hey, man, when you get back to Delhi, let's have a chat, because I'm the guy who runs TLR. I'm the guy who manages and runs TLR Cafe, and we do a bunch of gigs and that kind of thing. So I went to go meet him, and Gautam, who was the owner of the venue, when I got back to Delhi, and they said, "Look, Su's going to take a break for 6 months. He wants to go and travel and stuff. So we need somebody to run the venue." And he spoke very highly of you after the NH7 experience, and would you be up to kind of run the venue while Su's gone? So I was 23, and I was like, hell yeah, what 23-year-old doesn't want to run a bar, when he's that age, so especially the coolest bar in town, that's doing all the gigs that you want to go for. So Stu was leaving in 2 weeks, and basically in 2 weeks he's like, look, here's how you do the bookings, here's how you do the tech writer, here's how you do the sound check, here's how you do hospitality. Like, he gave me a crash course basically in 2 weeks, and it was like, 2 weeks got up, and he just hands me the keys, and he goes, "Yep, okay, over to you now." So that's how I started running TLR, and so I ran TLR for about a year. And while I was working at TLR, this very nice French lady called Emma called me, and she goes, "Hey, I'm Emma. I'm from Blue Frog. We're a venue based in Mumbai, and we're opening in Delhi, and we're opening a Delhi branch, and we'd like to talk to you about coming on board, So I went to have a coffee with Emma at the newly made Blue Frog Delhi, and I thought I was just going to meet her. Turns out Mahesh was there, Stirman was there, Ashu was there, Jahan was there, Mayank was there. I mean, it was all the top dogs, right? From Blue Frog, Bombay. Yeah. And so I had a very intimidating meeting with them where I was terrified, because here I am running a small, 150 cab venue in Hoskas Village, and these guys are like, our capacity is 1,200 people a night, and like, here's the club, and here's the courtyard, and here's the restaurant, and here's the rooftop, and I was like, man, holy shit. So they offered me the position, and it was considerably more money than I was making, and more than that, it was a bigger brand, and I saw the opportunity to do bigger stuff there, and that's really all I've ever been pursuing my entire career, is basically doing things that have impact and things that have scale, so when I see an opportunity to do something that has a wider footprint than what I've been doing previously, that's what I'm excited by, and that's what I want to pursue. So I joined Blue Frog, and simultaneously along, these years when this was happening, I was working on NH7 Weekender as the stage manager at the same time. And then in 2013, at the beginning, Bobby calls me and he says, "Hey man, what are you up to? And how's it going to Blue Frog? And, that kind of stuff." And I was going to stage manage NH7 Bangalore that year. I think it would have been end of 2012 when we were still doing NH7 in Bangalore. And so I was stage managing, and Bobby comes up to the dub station. He's like, "Hey man, let's have a chat, backstage and whatever." And we went into one of the green rooms, and he's like, "Look, Nihal, who was managing Duelist at the time, he's going to California to pursue a master's. So we actually don't have a manager for Sahej, and I know that you and Sahej are close, and you guys have worked together, previously. So would you like to join OML and be Duelist Inquiry's manager?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really know anything about artist management, but it sounds great, and I'd love to chat further." And I was very upfront with Bobby. I said, "Look, Nihal's been doing it for 3 years. He really knows his stuff." He's like, "Look, don't worry about all that. Come to Bombay, spend 3 months in Bombay, and we will train you right up." So I came down to Bombay very naive, and I will never forget this. I landed in Bombay. It was like 6:30 in the morning, and I get to Bandra where I was supposed to meet these guys, and they had a party the previous night, which I didn't know about. So nobody's answering their phone. So I'm on the street in Bandra, which coincidentally is the same street that I currently live on, and I can see that spot, where I sat 10 years ago, just on my luggage. And I was calling. Nobody answered until like 2 p.m.,
So
and then they're like, "Hey man, why don't you come upstairs now?" So I went upstairs, and so Nihal lived there, who was Duelist manager at the time. Anirudh Voletti lived in that house, and Dhruv Jagasia, who now runs Big Bad Wolf. So these are the guys who really brought me up to speed. Most of what I know in artist management is because of these three. gentlemen,
Yeah.
and they really put me onto the game at that point. So I spent 3 months in Bombay, and I did my training, so to speak, and then I went back to Delhi, spent 2 years as an artist manager in Delhi. Vijay was
With
very happy with
Duelist.
OML.
Yeah, with OML.
Well, Duelist, and then I think the second artist I signed was Anish, and then
Okay.
I think the third artist I signed was Nuclear, and then the fourth one was Sand Dunes, and then the floodgates kind of opened, basically from that point. So Vijay was very happy with sort of the numbers I was putting up, and so he said, "Look, man, we'd like you to take on a bigger role. We want you to run the artist management sort of piece of the whole vertical, but you're going to have to move to Bombay, for that." So I moved to Bombay in 2015, and that is when stuff went sort of much wider,
Yeah.
So Nicholson happened, Ganesh Talkies happened, F-16s happened, and then of course at the same time we had all of our legacy acts, right? We had Raghu, we had Ankur. We had Medieval Pundits, Karsh, Pentagram, all of this stuff. So, so at a point, I think we had about 18 artists across genres, at that point in time. So it was a huge undertaking, and it was a lot of responsibility. So, but I loved it, and so all in all said and done, I spent 4 years there at OML. So yeah, that's the short version, basically.
But you know what? There's so much. You've packed a lot in, this, past 10 minutes. But I think, now when I've just been I'm thinking out loud, the fact that to become an efficient artist manager, or to become that person who kind of builds an artist and grooms an artist and kind of allows the artist to go that next level, I think you need to have all of these experiences. That kind of makes you the manager you are, right? Like the artist kingmaker that you are. So I think your foundation is strongest as A&R or in A&R. And with each of the artists, I think it's quite obvious, right? So and with each of the artists that you worked with, what has made them tick? So for example, I know that you've maybe Duelist Inquiry was handed over to you, right? You were asked to manage him because of so and so reasons. But did you get to pick your artists? And if you did, was there anything that you were looking out for? Was there something that made them stand out?
Yeah, 100%. To answer the first question on whether I was allowed to pick my artists, the answer is yes and no. If there was an artist that I felt was a strong option for us to sign, and they were unsigned and they were buzzing and that kind of thing, I would have to make a case to Vijay about why this artist makes sense for us, what we can do for them, and most importantly, what are the revenue projections looking like? Because for every new artist that we take on, we're going to need a new resource. We're going to need time allocated to that. We're going to need at the end of the day, we're running a business here. This is not a community welfare program. You know what I mean? We are running a for-profit business. So he would look at the numbers, and he would look at, what's it going to take, and do we need to hire somebody additional to kind of service this, and, that kind of stuff. So yes, I could pick artists, but I had to justify the reasoning and the rationale behind it. Now, on the artist side of it, what would I look for? I would look for basically 2 or 3 things, right? So the first is that I want somebody who is ready to work. I don't want to work with somebody who is going to think that, oh, we've signed to the biggest management company in the country now, so I'm going to take my foot off the gas and my manager is going to do everything for me, because that is a ridiculous proposition, because at the end of the day, it is still your career. You might have somebody helping you, but nobody wants you to succeed more than you. You
can't go on autopilot.
And you need to be hungry and willing to work and that kind of thing. So every artist that I've worked with, I think has really had that hunger, that ambition. They really want to see things escalate. They want to see things go to the next level. They want to see bigger shows. They want to see more streaming. They want to see, all of that kind of stuff. So that's number one. Number two is, I think, somebody who is understanding, friendly, relatable, and has that personality that an audience can gravitate around and towards, and somebody that they can relate to. And I've been so blessed and so lucky to work with a lot of artists like that, Udyan being the first and foremost example of the, Nuclear. He would always make time for his fans, and, he would there were so many times at NH7 where we'd be like sound checking, setting up the stage and whatever. And like, we would have lunch with like the security guys and like, the labor, everybody who's helping us build the stage, and there was no fussiness, there.
Yeah.
So I think that relatability is really important. Right. And I think that the third part of it is, obviously talent.
Yeah.
You gotta have talent coming out of your ears. You know what I mean? And I think that, I've been very lucky to have a lot of amazing talent be sort of attracted to me, like magnified almost in a way, where like they knew that I could benefit their career, and so they approached me, and I feel very, very fortunate to have that opportunity, to have the ability to sort of cherry pick in some ways, the artists that we want to work with, so take somebody like Nicholson, for example, right? Like that first tune that he put out, iconic, vocal melody that he does, in the beginning of that. I literally heard that for what, and I got goosebumps, the hair on my arm stood up, and I was like, wow, then turns out that he's a mutual friend through a bunch of people, and then we started becoming friendly, and he was quite hesitant actually to sign to management, because he was like, I don't know, I'm kind of doing my own thing, and nobody sounds like me in the country, and that kind of thing. But when we finally were able to bring him on board, it was like throwing gasoline onto a fire, and it really worked well. So. That's something that I'm going to cherish, forever. So I think these are the main factors, that I kind of look for. And if there was going to be a fourth one, it would probably be songwriting, because everybody can make a track, right?
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people who can write a song, and really structure it in a way that has authenticity and gravitas and speaks to your heart and evokes an emotion, so. I think these are really the qualities that I'm looking for.
Great. I hope everyone who's listening and tuning in, making notes, because and I think it's safe to say, like, especially for a lot of the artists today, a lot of the young artists that I work with as well, they're all looking out for managers. And at some point, this is a conversation that I had with one of my earlier guests as well, that at what point do you actually need to get a manager?
I have a one-line answer for that.
Yeah.
The one-line answer is you need a manager when you are doing more business than you can handle personally.
Yeah.
Yahi hai. That's it.
Yes.
Okay. You don't need a manager until you are completely overwhelmed by the business side of things, that your creative process gets affected.
It's getting affected.
That's it.
Thank you. Yeah. In fact, this is also something that I've mentioned to a bunch of them. I was just like, see, you've put one song out, or you've put an EP out, which has like 2 or 3 songs, and you're not really touring, you're not really doing as much as you can be doing. So I don't think you should be looking at bringing on board a manager, because nobody's going to work for free, obviously. And do you really want to be taking or paying someone out of the meager amounts that you're earning? Because neither of you are going to be happy then, right?
Totally.
So yeah, that makes sense. And then I think this is like a constant misconception. And I feel it's obviously like things have changed. People understand the relationship between an artist manager and artist is not just about getting them more shows. Of course, it's an important part, but it's also about grooming the artist into becoming the best version of themselves, right? Like at least like musically. And obviously that relationship kind of has weird boundaries, because you do tend to spend so much time with the artist and vice versa. How do you tell an artist if you don't like their work? Like, it's kind of tricky, right? Like how do you tell them that that song is crap about like hurting their emotions and knowing that you'll have to like bear the consequences of that, like, emotionally as well. So
Look, I
yeah,
think anybody who's ever met me, or spoken
yeah,
with me
yeah.
knows that I do not mince my words at all. I am
Okay.
a absolute savage, when it comes
Oh,
to
okay.
saying what I think,
Okay.
This whole thing of niceties and beating around the bush and trying not to hurt people's feelings and all and whatever is a waste of everyone's time. It is a waste of the
Hmm.
artist's time. It is a waste of my time. It's a waste of our energy. So
Hmm.
if something is not working, it is
Hmm.
better to call it out immediately
Yeah.
rather than saying, hey, I think this can be a little better. I think that we can improve this. Maybe let's try a different arrangement here. Let's try different whatever, because what's going
Hmm.
to happen then is that
Hmm.
you're going to try to, you know that saying, you can't polish a turd, right? If
Yeah.
something's a turd, it's a turd. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so rather than treading water and wasting time and saying, "Arey, ye isko try karte hain, usko try karte hain, this, that, whatever,"
Yeah.
let's just nip it in the bud and say, this one is not happening. Let's
Hmm.
move on to the next one. Out of these three things that you're working on right now,
Hmm.
this is your best work. So let's
Hmm.
focus on this, and let's put our energy here. Let's put our
Yeah.
energy towards this goal. So the short answer is speak your mind, be
Yeah.
honest and straightforward, but be clear in your thinking. Do
Hmm.
not tell an artist, I don't like this just because I don't like this. Tell them,
Yeah.
I don't like
Constructive
this
feedback.
because the
Yeah.
melody is sounding old or dated, or the lyrics don't have any weight to them, or this or
Hmm.
that. And I think part of the reason why artists accept that kind of feedback from me is
Hmm.
because they know that I have a pretty comprehensive understanding of the recording process, of different
Hmm.
genres of music, of different
Hmm.
styles of music, and how that music translates live, right?
Hmm.
Now, if
Hmm.
I'm a non-musician, right,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
am, I dabbled when I was a kid and all through
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, college, high school and college and whatever. But, I'm not coming at it from a totally outside perspective.
Yeah.
I get what we're doing. I
Yeah.
understand the processes that play here. So if I'm going to tell an artist that I don't like something, then it will be very rationally thought through
Hmm.
why I don't like it, and that will be put across to them in completely plain speak.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. And have you ever, I mean, it's like maybe kind of steering a little away, but has it ever backfired? Like, have you had an instance where it's become like the
Of
huge
course,
screaming
it's
match? I don't
backfired.
know.
No. See, that's something that you'll also find out about me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm not a screamer.
Okay.
I don't raise my voice. I
Okay.
don't go ballistic and start yelling and all of that.
Okay.
I am the
Just
exact
snarky.
opposite. I just go quiet.
Oh, shit.
अगर
Okay.
तेरे को नहीं सुनने का है, then मत सुन. At the end of the day,
Hmm.
I'm trying to help you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the answer is I will always make my point heard. If they
Hmm.
disagree with it, then well and good. Let them
Hmm.
disagree with it. And they can continue on that path. And once that decision has been made, that the artist
Hmm.
still wants to do this, despite the
Yeah.
feedback and whatever, my job is still to service that in the best way possible, whether I like it or don't like it. That is my
Yeah.
mandate,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the answer is yes, there has been, of course, there's going to be disagreements. I've been doing this for
Yeah.
so long
Yeah.
with so many artists, so many different genres. You can't be right 100% of the time,
Correct.
And
Yeah.
there have also been instances where I've said I don't like something, and then something goes out, and that is the one. That is the one,
Yeah.
that basically hits. So I've
Yeah.
also been proven wrong a
Yeah.
number of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess because I don't think there is a formula, right? Like there's always going to be like that buffer where a margin of error, which you can't obviously predict something to 100%
See,
accuracy.
there is a formula, there
Yeah.
100%. There is verse, chorus, verse, bridge, whatever, outro, and like all
No.
that.
I'm talking about formula for like success of a song becoming a hit. You don't know
See,
when it's going to become a hit.
if we had that, then everything I would have touched would have been gold, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I want to like now talk about the emotional side of things, right? Like, because especially when you've invested so much time and effort, and there is obviously like a personal bond or a relationship that you have that you share with the artist. This is, I mean, it's inevitable, or maybe not really inevitable, but mm, like when you've been with an artist or when you've managed an artist and work with someone for a significant period of time, not in terms of um, the duration of the years, but more in terms of the impact you've had on each other. How do you deal with an artist moving on? As in, obviously, I'm not going to take names, but I just want to know your thoughts on that.
No, that's an absolutely valid question, and
Hmm.
I will break it down into two parts of it. Right, one is
Okay.
sort of the come up, and one is the sort of come down. Right,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
on the come up, when you are building something together, right,
Yeah.
and that camaraderie is growing, and that trust is growing, and things are really working.
Yeah.
I'm a very firm believer in under promising and over delivering, right? So if
Yeah.
you set expectations early on, being like, yo,
Hmm.
this is realistically what we're looking at, but you
Hmm.
as a manager know that you are going to outperform that.
Hmm.
That is what wins trust, and that is what builds friendship, right? If you are
Hmm.
able to deliver results,
Hmm.
because the inverse of that is talking and not delivering,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
you always want to set expectations low, and you want to have that self confidence that you're able to blow those expectations out of the water and over deliver for your client. Basically,
Hmm.
that is how camaraderie and trust is built with
Hmm.
an artist and over time.
Hmm.
Now, the second part of the question, which is what do you do when an artist wants to leave and move on? The
Hmm.
simple answer to that is you cannot do anything.
Hmm.
There is no piece of paper in this world that you
Hmm.
can shake over somebody's head and
Hmm.
say, do what you agreed to. It
Hmm.
just doesn't happen, especially in the creative industries where everything is so nuanced and everything is based on feeling and
Yeah.
emotion and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to say you can't leave because you have signed for X many years and da 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 da, that is unenforceable, number one. Number
Hmm.
two is that it is just the wrong thing to do because
Yeah.
then
That's
both
maybe
people are
happen.
stuck in a horrible relationship and nobody's happy,
Yeah. That's
basically.
true.
So the basic answer is, and I've had this at multiple points in my career, not just one artist, many artists have
Yeah.
moved on and left, but the
Hmm.
basic thing is that if they believe that they can find more success elsewhere,
Hmm.
you let them go,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have always had that resilience and that self-belief that, what, if I did it once, I'm going to do it again,
Hmm.
and knowing that I can build and scale and sort of grow artists from the ground up, that
Yeah.
is what I do, and
Yeah.
so being able to know when the point is right to say, you know what, it's fine. I wish you
Go
the
on.
best. Nothing
Yeah.
but nothing but love and success. All the best to you. Continue
Hmm.
along. Even though I might not agree with it,
Hmm. Hmm.
being negative and horrible about something like that,
Hmm.
is not constructive for anyone's life, and carrying that kind of weight with you is hurtful and impactful in the long run. So
Yeah.
you accept it, you try to acknowledge where things might have gone wrong, you try to
Hmm.
correct those things for the future,
Hmm.
and you use it as a constructive experience as you carry on with your life and your career.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very mature, stable way of like responding to it. Though I'm sure you would have had like angsty moments when you're dealing with it
I've been
then.
depressed
So
for years.
yeah.
Let's not
I
even like
mean,
go there, like, I mean, I'll go
yeah.
there if you want to, but like the thing is,
No,
right,
no, I mean,
is
whatever you're comfortable with.
at a certain point, right, you've put
Yeah.
so much of your love, time, energy,
Mm.
sweat, tears, sleepless nights, not
I
eating
know.
correctly, abusing your body, getting on
Yeah.
flights, I mean, this shit is real,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
it is not a fantasy,
Yeah.
and then when you build something to scale and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore,
Yeah.
your natural sort of thing is fuck, like I
Yeah.
can't believe this shit is like not happening,
Yeah.
and like where did I go wrong? You have self-doubt, and you examine your past, and you examine the relationship, and you
Mm-hmm.
nitpick those things and all of that. But as I've gotten older and as I've
Mm.
gotten more life experience and
Wiser.
matured a little bit wiser, yeah, sure. I've reflected on those periods of my life, and I've really realized that at the end of the day, I was just doing myself a disservice, by dwelling on it, by soaking in it, by marinating in it, and that's not helpful to anyone. So what do? You wake up the next day, you drink the strongest coffee you could get your hands on, and you get back to work, basically. And that's how I choose to be, and I like working, and I enjoy working, and I want to build again, So I think that's what you hinted at in your intro as well. Is like, I've been very lucky to work with a lot of these artists, and I think a lot of these artists, if you talk to any of them, they will say, when I got with Tej or whatever, that's when scale really happened. That's when I was able to level up. And I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of that being my legacy.
I know, and I think it kind of showed even with like the fact that you moved on and built Third Culture, and with that experience that you had with all these artists, as in, and I mean, obviously, I'm just also thinking about how it's just, I mean, in terms of like from a relationship perspective, also, like, are you still friends with any of the people that you managed in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be friends with everyone, but obviously at a certain point, the relationship is strained in the beginning, but I feel like, time heals all kind of thing, and what I'm actually, experiencing a lot now is that, like, now that I'm not in management anymore, and I have a different outlook and I have a different approach, it gives you perspective on things, gives you a way to look at it in a different light and say, oh, this person is not out of my life or out of my network completely, and I would love to reconnect with this person and do work with them, even if it's just a professional thing and not a personal thing. Can we do something new together? Can we do something exciting together? Can we do something, that brings us back, So that's what a lot of the last couple of months have been for me, is really thinking of like, fuck, it's a whole new perspective and outlook.
Perspective, Yeah. And then, like you rightly said, I think no one can deny the presence of either like the artist or the manager in your life, right? Like, it's all the artists that you worked with, that the scale that they've achieved at that particular stage has all happened at that particular period of time. So, I mean,
but I think that's a slippery slope. I think taking credit as a manager is a tough one.
So I'm not talking about taking credit, but I'm saying that's happened. It's a joint effort. It happened together.
Absolutely.
You can't say that it happened on your own, and they can't say it happened on their own. Both of you all are present. So I think that's a nice way of looking at it, and I think that's very gracious of you to say that as well. That you're not taking credit for someone's career, of course, but you're obviously, like, you've played an important part in it. Which brings me to Third Culture, actually. Obviously, I mean, I kind of know the reason behind the name. You're a Third Culture king. But how did it happen? Like, how did you decide, okay, I'm going to go, solo and start up an agency and actually manage, like, niche talent?
Yeah, so I left OML, I think in like Feb or March of 2017, and I was kind of like over it at that point. I was kind of burnt out a little bit, and because my mom's English, I have a British passport, and I was in a position where I could kind of leave the country, and I could go in and explore other things and do other stuff. And while I was sort of traveling, I went to Japan, and I went to Australia, I went to New Zealand, and I went to the US, and I was kind of just exploring all these different opportunities that were kind of coming in, because it had been so long since I was looking for employment or a new job or a new country or a new thing. I was open to everything. And what ended up happening was Nuclear was touring the US and Canada on a tour that I had set up for him. And he called me and he said, hey man, like, even if OML's not paying you and you don't work for them or whatever anymore, you're the guy who set up this tour. All the promoters, everybody, that you've been in touch with and that kind of thing. And I'd really feel a lot more comfortable if you were there, with me on this tour. So I joined him on that tour, and while we
This is
were
2017.
2017, yeah. And we were doing EDC Vegas, and it's pretty big shows, So he was like, "Look, why don't you come?" And his wife was there. His son was also on the road with him, and Rahul, who's his manager at OML, was also there. So we were all touring together. But me and Udyan had at that point in time had a really great camaraderie and great understanding, and we played the Vancouver show, and we ended up going back to the Airbnb we were staying at, and had a couple of whiskeys, and just kind of decompressing and just having a catch up and that kind of thing. And he was very straightforward with me. He said, "Look, man, I really trust you. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm sad that you're not at OML anymore. I really want to keep working with you. Would you consider coming back to India and being my manager?" And I said, "Look, I'm open to it, but it's got to be a new setup. I can't go back to OML and do this and that kind of thing. And if I do this, will you come with me?" And he's like, "Done." He said, 100%. So I had my first client.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. So that's kind of the genesis story, And then I came back to India. I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to work for anybody else anymore. I'm going to do my own thing, now, and it's on, basically.
Yeah.
And, so Udyan was the first, then Blot was the second, and then I actually don't even recall right now who the third. It might have been Zokuma, and then I heard Josh's solo record, as J-Babe. It was insane. It was incredible. Like, I saw him play live at Car Social at Sohail's Dance Okay Please night, and me and Josh obviously were friends from me managing F-16s, and
F-16s,
I'd known him for a few years and that kind of thing. So, but that was the first time I ever heard those J-Babe songs, and instantaneously, like he literally got off stage, walked outside, we had a drink, and I was like, dude, like I have to do this project with you, and so things just started scaling from there. And I would say the first 4 to 6 months of Third Culture was like just me by myself, and working out of my home. And then I started bringing on staff, and I don't think it was until like a year and a half into it that we actually got an office and that kind of thing, So the intention was to be quite selective in our signings and in our approach. But as you realize that you're running a business, as opportunities start to come in, you see potential revenue. That is when I started expanding, and then that's when things moved into cool. Like we'll manage a wider variety of artists. We will start doing international tours as well. We will start consulting on brand projects. We will start move into touring properties. We will move into building our own festival, and that's when, the scale started happening. So, for me, it was like what Third Culture was set up to do, and what we've always done. The foundation rock is management, but we also do a confluence of other services as well. Really, I mean, if I'm totally and completely honest, it's just shit that I like.
I know. There's a lot of stuff that you're familiar with and you enjoy doing. So
and when it's like your own company, right? Like, then you're like, well,
you can just
why not
go ape shit with it?
Exactly. So I've really had a lot of fun doing that, and it's been very rewarding. I had a lot of fun.
And and obviously, like, I think it's a fairly like obvious segue into owning content as well. So in terms of like setting up record labels, right? You had Dualism Records with Sahej in 2016, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Yeah, and Expert Quality in 2021. So, I mean, what were you thinking when you? I mean, I'm not to phrase it like that, but what was going on in your head when you
No,
decided
no,
to
phrase it like that. Phrase it like that. People are insane. People who run indie record labels are completely mad. They're out of their minds.
What were you thinking?
Completely.
Yeah.
No, so let's talk Dualism Records first, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Dualism Records was the thought process behind it was actually it was Sahej, Mo City, and myself. Basically setting it up and doing it together. And what that was basically saying this entire sector is unorganized. It is artists are just making songs, records, music, and they're pouring their heart, their soul, their creativity, their love, their passion into it, and then it goes up on SoundCloud or on YouTube, and it does 200 views, and then nobody ever hears of it again. Basically. So can we do this in a better way where we bring our three talents together and we provide some sort of a scale? Maybe it's not whatever major label scale or even indie big player scale, but it is intention. It's a community that we're servicing. It's coming together for the good of this community and these people that we're a part of, right? Most importantly, there was no label at that time that would have made sense for Duelist. It was built to release his own music.
Oh,
basically.
okay.
We needed a vehicle to park all of the masters and the rights and the publishing interests underneath, and that became Dualism Records. Once we had Dualism and we were putting out Sahej's own music, that is when Mad Boy Mink was sending Sahej a track, Frame by Frame was sending me a track, somebody else was sending more city demos. We're like, holy shit, there's like our friends are writing dope music, maybe we can use this vehicle and put a compilation together. So that's where Subterra came from, right? And Subterra is underground, right? Yeah. So it was basically like a funny or an intellectual way to say underground, This is the sound of Indian underground. So I think we did Subterra 1 and Subterra 2. And if you listen to those compilations, it's an incredible snapshot of what was happening at the time, and also artists that grew up and sort of blew up basically from that point. Now, coming to export quality, it was 110% a passion project. Anybody who thinks that I'm making any money on export quality is completely out of their minds, because it is a money pit. It is where my profits go to die, basically. So that's the God's honest truth of it, Now, why do I do it? I do it for two reasons, right? The first is that all of these artists that are signing to export quality are typically in the early stages of their career, Almost everybody that we've released, it's either their first proper release or their second release or something like that, save a few OGs like Curtain Blue and Frame, those kind of old school homies of mine, right? But the majority of our catalog is either first or second record or even first single, being put out by an artist. So I believe that my knowledge and network can yield a better listening audience and a more receptive audience to these fresh and up and coming artists, So I want to use my expertise and my relationships to shine a light on what I believe is truly groundbreaking, exciting, and great music, What is the other side of that coin? Is that a lot of these artists don't have the resources available to roll out the music in an effective manner. They're not going to spend money on a music video, and they're not going to spend money on a professional mix and master. They don't have the resources to do a press and PR campaign, and they won't think about a social media plan and a grid and, all of these kind of things. So if we can spend efficiently, I'm not talking about dropping crazy loot, we have pretty fixed budgets that we work with on every single EP and album that we work with. And I'm quite strict about sticking to that. There's a couple of projects that are very dear to my heart where I've just thrown the budget out of the window and been like,
Let's
fuck
do
it.
it.
I want to do this shit, basically.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
that's because I really believe in that, but largely speaking, if I can spend in an efficient and effective manner and I can get results at the end of that thing, then that's what I want to do, So the approach with EQ has been discovering and showcasing new talent, spending a budget to accelerate the growth of those artists and of those releases, and use my global network and relationships and sort of connections with festivals, stuff like South by Southwest and whatever, and all that kind of stuff, magnetic fields, getting invited to like go and do a showcase, and like, can we use those relationships to bring something cool, interesting, fresh, and unique into the market? Because if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? Like, it's just one of those things where like it had to be done, and that was like my mission, really, where I was just like, man, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to do it. And the other part of it, of course, is like you correctly pointed out, owning stuff, owning catalog, owning IP, like whatever, like this is like stuff that like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, I can look back and be like, yo, we did, that's my legacy. That's like, I'm so proud of being a part of that release of that single, of the music video, And the other thing is like, it's a lot of my other work is administrative, right? Like negotiating, doing deals, doing licenses, that kind of stuff. And it's all very businessy, Anybody who thinks they're going to join the music business and be partying and, living a mad life is like, they're in it for completely the wrong reasons, right? Because this shit is a real fucking grind, basically. So because a lot of my other work is so businessy and administrative, Export Quality Records was my creative release, where I could be creative with the music videos that we put together and artwork and that kind of stuff. So it gave me also a creative outlet, and that's something that I've really enjoyed in the time that we've had.
Okay, so and kind of connected to the question that I want to move into next. EQ still around, right?
Unclear. At this point in time, I with my new situation with Nodwin and everything that's going on, I really want to put my focus and attention on that. With that being said, I will not be able to work on Export Quality myself anymore. But I would like for EQ to continue in some avatar into the future, even if I am not actively involved myself.
Involved in it. Okay. So now that I think you've kind of come a full circle, right? You're back to NH7 with Nodwin. And obviously that decision wouldn't have been easy. But what made you put Third Culture on hold?
So it's a really good question. And that's like a lot of people have actually asked me this, The simple answer is I want to do something new. I've been doing the management dance for 12 years now, and at a certain point, don't get me wrong, I've had some incredible experiences. I've had the highest of the highs, but I've also had the lowest of the lows, and I'm honest and upfront, and I wear my heart on my sleeve when it comes to that, but with that being said, I wanted a change of pace. I wanted something that got me outside of the management game for a little bit. And some of the folks who work at Nodwin are like brothers to me, and people who I've come up in the game with for many, many years. And that project itself, Bacardi NH7 Weekender, is where I cut my teeth and where I came up in the game. So to be invited back and have that be the alternative to management, I was like, fuck, like, oh, this is cool. Like, I would love to take on a bigger role, over there. So that's sort of the first part of it, right? Is that I wanted a change of speed. And I'd say what the second part of it is that, and this is something I mentioned a little earlier as well, is that the stuff that really excites me is doing stuff on scale. That's what was so dope about like the Nuclear project and really building that, because we were taking shows that were 5,000, 7,000, 8,000 capacity to cities like Vizag, and Indore and Guwahati, and like really building, like breaking ground, breaking new markets, opening new markets. Now if you see like this weekend, Indore and Chandigarh and all these places have boiler room coming, and like I don't think that would have happened without the work that we had done, in those markets.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So building stuff on scale has always been exciting to me, right? And so the position at Nodwin, of course, is Festival Director, Bacardi NH7 Weekender, but it is also Reserve with Shuffle and doing Red Bull stuff and doing Levi stuff and, like working on stuff that has real impact and real scale. That is what excites me. And that's what I love doing. So being in a position to really take my expertise and be like, hey, like I know how to do this, I know how to do 5,000 people on the ground. I know how to do 10,000 people on the ground, so let's do it, and especially coming out of the pandemic where, you literally saw like the music industry vanish,
almost
so coming back and being like, you know what, man, let's do this, and it speaks to like when I was a kid, right? And I was growing up in Delhi, the only live music that I could really go and see was like Euphoria or like Indian Ocean, like that kind of parikrama, like those were like the options that were available. Now, if you're a 13-year-old, 14-year-old in this country, you can go and see an international artist every single weekend. You can go to 5, 7, 8, 10 festivals over the course of the year. You can go to your parents and show them a picture of Nuclear and say, I want to be this. We didn't have those kind of role models, so so all of the work that I've done, I feel has had a real impact in building the industry and sort of growing it out. So and that's not just me, that's full, Tej Bhatia, Manbir, Vijay Nair, Sohail, Mo, it's been a collective, Naveen, it's a huge collective effort of everybody, coming together and pushing the boundaries and pushing the envelopes, of this whole thing. So being able to be back into a position where I can do scale, that's exciting for me.
Yeah. And I'm so happy to hear that, because I think I'm sure a lot of people, like you said, have asked you this question, and to constantly have to justify it, saying that, you did do all of this, you've built so much with Third Culture, but the fact that what you're going to be doing with Nodwin, with NH7, is something that's as close to your heart as A&R is, because it's like a cumulative effect of everything that you've done and worked on in the last 10 or 12 years, right? So I'm excited to see what NH7 Weekender is going to look like in the coming years. So
I hope you are very happy with what we're going to put up, and I could not be more excited, because we've had our first couple of meetings and I've kind of put some ideas on the table and things looking really good. So so I think we're gonna have an amazing festival this year.
Looking forward to it, Tej. I really am.
Awesome.
So that also, I have like a side question here.
Sure.
What happened to T-bone steaks? Do you still DJ?
So T-bone steaks was my nickname all through college, and when I first started DJing,
it's also your Insta handle.
It's also my Insta handle. Yeah. But T-bone was my nickname for a long time, and I really loved the De La Soul album Stakes is High. So that's one of my favorite albums of all time. So I just put them together, and so it's T-bone steaks, right?
Okay.
So that's the sort of origin story of the name, but I moved back to India and I started DJing, and that's when the scene was really coming up, and my sound was playing hip hop and trap music and big room EDM-ish kind of stuff, but with a trap element and a hip hop sort of like origin and that kind of stuff. So I was never out there playing Avicii or whatever, right? But I would definitely drop like Dylan Francis or Diplo or Valentino Khan, and like that kind of stuff. And like I really enjoyed that time of my life. But the reason why I stopped DJing was two things. The first was that I really wanted to focus on business. I wanted to focus on the business side of stuff. And that for me was more exciting than showing up to, a venue on Thursday night and playing to whatever, 30, 40, 80 people, whatever it was, So for me, I was like, okay, I really want to double down on the business. And honestly, at that point, the management stuff was blowing up, and it took a lot of my time. And it was impossible to tour as much as I was touring as a tour manager as well, and to do my own gigs as well. So I was like, you know what? I just really want to focus on the business, on the management side of it. The second reason I stopped DJing was because there were people who were way more talented than me, who are still around, as DJs. And I could see their passion, and I could see what this meant to them, being able to share their music with an audience live and that kind of thing. And so I was getting gigs. I was getting gigs just because people knew me from business, because people knew me from management and whatever, And so they'd hit me up, hey man, you want to play here, play there, play da, da, da. And it was very easy for me to pick up gigs, right? But if I was taking that gig, that meant somebody else was not getting that gig. So I was like, you know what, it's not right for me to be taking people's gigs who are way more passionate about this than I am, so I decided to give it a pause, and I decided to step out, and to answer
very big hearted, by the way.
I think what's going to be your next question is, do you still DJ? And the answer is no, I don't. Well, because every single friend of mine, like all my best friends, are the best DJs in the country, Zokuma, Dream States, Rafiki, like these are like Tarkib, like these are like guys who I consider like my homies, and like would I rather like try to be like, oh, I'm also a DJ, or would I rather just be like, you guys are like amazing DJs, and I'm just gonna be hanging out here with my beer and just like listen to my best friends play music,
and having fun,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. But I think obviously there's so much that you've done, right? Like I can't think of anything you haven't done. You've been a stage hand, you've been an artist manager, you've been a radio jockey also, I guess.
It's a funny story actually, that I've never actually hosted a show on air, but when I was interning, when I would have been 16 or 17, my family was living in Africa, and I interned for a guy called DJ Blaze, who worked for the only English language radio station in Tanzania called Clouds 102.6 FM. Now, when I went to go intern for Blaze, he was the guy on air playing the records, and they have this really cool style of music in Tanzania. It's called bongo flavor, where basically what they do is they take big instrumentals, like hip hop instrumentals from the West, like in the club or like the next episode or whatever, and then they spit in Swahili on those instruments.
Wow.
So they make Swahili versions of all these like club bangers. So he was a big bongo flavor, DJ, and people knew him in the clubs and all that and whatever. But so I show up to the radio station, and I got to know him, and we hung out and all of that stuff. And he's like, hey, like 3-4 days into the internship, he's like, hey man, you've got a cool American accent, And I was like, oh, like, yeah, so what do you want? He's like, hey man, like, will you record all these drops for me? So I recorded all of Cloud's drops. So even today, if you go to Tanzania, you will hear me on air saying, you're listening to Clouds 102.6 FM, Tanzania's only English radio station. That's my voice.
Is it still the only English radio station?
It might have changed now, but, last I heard, my sister was back there a couple of months ago, and she's like, oh, I heard you on the radio, and so they heard like all the stuff like, oh, you're listening to DJ Blaze, like, oh, fast forward the record, like rewind, like all that stuff. Like, so all of my drops are still there.
So you've been on the radio. We'll take it. Yeah. I'll take that.
Sure.
Okay, great. So, now since given the kind of roles you've had, right? Like, what are your predictions for the industry? Like, what do you think? Like, and things that you're scared of, that you're worried about, that you're cautious of, and what are you hopeful about?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So things I'm scared about, I'm not really scared. I'm fear. Operating from a place of fear is not is not how I live my life, and it's something I choose very consciously not to operate from a position of fear,
Okay.
So what am I scared of? I wouldn't say I'm scared. I'm just hesitant
Cautious.
about the fact that we might lose sight of some of our musicality or some of our stuff that's more interesting, genre bending, genre breaking, genre defying, in order to do something that is more mainstream and more successful, because it's a faster road to a career, and a lucrative career, and one that pays dividends. So that's some of the hesitation, is like, don't sell your soul out because, you can jump on this mainstream track or whatever, because maybe it's, sure, you're going to have millions of views, but is it you? Is it what you represent? Is it what, makes you excited and gets you up in the morning, So that's just the word of caution, to some of the artists. What am I excited about? Everything. I think that everything is on the up and up.
You're like Lola.
Lola. Well, yeah, my dog and the festival. But here's the long and short of it, right? So you've had Lola come down. DGTL is here. These monster global properties now look at India as a very exciting and lucrative market. I'm very fortunate that I get invited to speak at some conferences and stuff, like especially like internationally, and like my 4-line pitch for India is basically this, right? So point number one, unlike the Chinese market, English is a national language here in India.
Yeah.
So you have a large English speaking population already here in India. Point number two, about 65% of our population is below the age of 35. So we have an incredibly young country. Point number three, we have got approximately 600 million smartphone users in the country right now. That number is going to go to about 800 million smartphone users in about 5 years, right? 600 million is 4 times the entire population of the US right now, and that's just people who have smartphones here in India, The last point is that we have some of the cheapest data available anywhere in the world. You've got data providers like Jio who are giving you free internet when you sign up for a phone connection, If you put these 4 factors together, what do you have? You have a young population that's connected to the internet and speaks English. So anybody who is a Western artist or promoter or business, that's in the creative space, that's not looking at India as a lucrative market to grow their business has got it all wrong, basically. So India has more potential for growth than almost everywhere else in the rest of the world, Southeast Asia, of course, is still growing. The Middle East, of course, is still growing. Africa will come up eventually, but we have got so much potential for growth that everything is exciting. So if you look at events,
that's true.
Yeah, you're going to have more and more people, coming down, bigger players, and kind of building up the ecosystem here. If you look at the artist side, you're going to have more and more big A-list name artists that are going to be coming down to the country and touring it. We've had Katy Perry and Justin Bieber, and now John Legend is coming. I mean, like, stuff is really escalating. I think you would agree with me, right? That we have hit an inflection point. Like, stuff is moving now. The other point of it is that a lot of the brands are also seeing significant growth here in India, right? So post-pandemic, now they're willing to spend more money. They're willing to sort of of course, they're spending cautiously, and nobody's just trying to blow, their marketing bucks on one thing or big thing, that kind of thing. But if you can make a rational case for why this makes sense, brands will listen and will spend money. So I think that, that's some of the stuff that I'm also looking forward to. And I think the other part of it is that, when I was coming up as a manager, or, even now with Export Quality as an independent record label and whatever, you got to do it first, and then other people see your example like, oh, that guy did it. Oh man, maybe I can do it as well, So now there's so many new agencies coming up. There's so many new like labels are also coming up. Like, I mean, the ecosystem is really building out in a crazy pace, in a much faster fashion than we've seen in previous years. And I really credit that to people looking at this market as a place where they can have a viable career,
Yeah.
So and this industry. So yeah, so I think it's all on the up and up. I think things are very exciting. I think that the only other word of caution here really is that you got to learn to walk before you learn to run. There are promoters.
Get your basics right.
There are people who have bitten off more than they can chew, and that's where things have gone sideways. So if you proceed carefully and you put one foot in front of another and you take every day as it comes, and that is really how we're going to get to where we're going in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely, and I completely agree, and I think that whole bit that you said about how, and I've been noticing that, right? Like in without like, I don't want to make this political, but I'm saying India's getting a lot of attention now in different ways, and especially on the cultural side in terms of music. And now with the Oscar win, I mean, I know that's on
Oscar
the film
win.
industry
Look
side.
at last night. Dior did the runway show at the Gateway of India.
At the Gateway of India, is insane.
I mean, it's like, yeah. So India as a country, our stock is going up globally.
Yeah. It's like they're becoming mainstream. Like kind of.
I mean, I don't know if mainstream is it, because the thing is, see, we are in our own, like, we are in our own funda.
We are own
like
market
nobody,
also, yeah.
Like the Chinese are their own thing. India is its own thing. Like India, in fact, is a country of many countries, right? They say that, right? That within our country, we've got so many countries and cultures and cuisines and styles and everything. And that is what I have really, really enjoyed in my journey so far. I've been so lucky that I've gotten to tour so much. I've been so lucky that I've gotten to visit so many places. I've been able to travel. I've been able to eat so much food, insane food. Like that's number one. Like when we're touring, you can ask any artist that I've ever toured with. For a lot of artists, right? Food is just a function of like, I'm hungry, I'll eat food, and then whatever. But for me, no, we have to eat the best food. We have to eat the legendary food, and if we need to move the schedule to fit in the biryani or fit in the dosa or fit in the nagarjuna or fit in the whatever, we will do that. You know what I mean?
Well done. Priority.
That is critical, and trust me, I speak from experience. Nobody has a nice sound check when they're hungry. If everybody eats before they go to sound check, everything is cool. We'll let shit go. But if people are cranky and if people are hangry and you haven't had that banging meal, or you ate some horrible Subway sandwich or some terrible dosa in the airport, then it's not going to cut it, right? But if you've had the most banging food that you've had in a long time, and then you go to sound check after that, then everybody's sab khush hai, basically. That's the scene. So.
Oh yeah, of course. I think it all boils down to basics.
See, that's a word of advice for young tour managers. Feed your artists epic food and everybody's going to be cool,
Okay, yeah. Actually, now that's my last question to you. If you had to give advice to a young manager and to a young artist, one word of advice or one piece of advice rather, what would it be?
Patience.
To both?
Patience. Yeah. Nothing happens overnight. Nothing is, if you think that you just released your first single and you're going to be a nationally touring sensation immediately, life has got another thing coming for you, and if you think that as a manager that you signed your first client and that guy deserves to be headlining every festival in the country, then guess what? You got a long way ahead of you, So the simple answer is patience. And I think that the second word here would be perseverance. Keep your head down,
connected,
do your work, grind it out, understand that things take time, understand that, don't get disheartened when things don't go your way immediately, and take stock of the situation, understand where you lay in the whole situation of things, and continue to push when you believe in what you're doing. in the art you're making, in the music you're putting out, in the client you've signed, in the festival you're trying to put up. Like, you have to really believe it in your bones, that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And one exercise that I like to do a lot with new artists, and I recommend all young managers kind of do this, right? Is that whenever you're working with somebody, or whenever you're looking at signing somebody, or you want to bring somebody into your sort of business, then it's really important to have total honesty and transparency. And the exercise is that you should ask the artist what their short-term goals are, aka what can we achieve in the next 6 months, and what are their longer term goals, aka where do you want to be 2 years from now, 24 months from now. Every time I work with a new artist, and every time I sign a new artist, and people like my team at Third Culture is sick of me doing this, because I tell them to do it with all of the acts that we're working with, and like signing and whatever. But what does that do? It tells you this is what the artist's priorities are, and this is what they're hoping to achieve immediately, and it tells you this is where they see themselves in their future, right? So if you have that stuff written down on an email, in a notepad, wherever it is, so you can both go back and reference it. It holds the manager accountable. It holds the artist accountable. Have they done the things that they set out to do? Have you done the things that they assigned to you to do in the next few months? So I think it's really, really important to have that outline of short-term goals and long-term goals, because that is really gives you the roadmap, right? It gives you the roadmap for what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. So I'd recommend all young managers do this exercise with their new clients,
with the artists. Great. Thank you so much. I mean, I think this has been such a fun conversation, Tej. Thank you so much. I mean, all your experiences, the kind of things you've gone through, you've been so honest, and like you've shared such I think it kind of like, you're bearing your heart on your sleeve, like you mentioned, like that I think that vulnerability is refreshing to have that kind of a conversation with someone that I'm speaking officially for the first time. So thank you so much.
No, I mean, look, I really appreciate you having me on here, and I wish you all the best with the podcast. And I just want to say for the record also, the work that you are doing as well of this educating the younger artist community, and even the younger business guys, in the creative industries here in India, I think it's really admirable. And I think that more and more and more people will appreciate that in the long run. So more power to you, and absolute kudos. What you're doing is great.
Thank you so much, Tej. That means a lot. I mean, seriously, it really does. But once again, I'm so glad that you made time and that we recorded this. And I hope everyone who tuned in, really had a good time listening to us chat and laugh and, share notes and swap stories. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Sandhya.